Hello everyone, and welcome to our channel. Today we're going to show you how to shorten a zipper, whether it's made of metal or plastic, and whether it's separable or not. Before we get started, let's talk about the different parts that make up a zipper. There is the slider with its pull tab, the moving part that opens or closes the zipper. There are the teeth, over which the slider slides. There are the upper and lower stops or stoppers that prevent the slider from coming out of the zipper. And finally, there is the tape or ribbon to which the teeth and stops are attached. First, we'll identify the type of zipper we're working with to find out how to shorten it. The teeth of a zipper can be molded or injected. In other words, they are made of plastic and fused to the zipper tape. There are separable and non-separable zippers with teeth of this type. There are also coil zippers, in which case a nylon spiral is sewn onto the tape. Most zippers of this type are available by the meter or non-separable. And last but not least, the teeth can be made of metal, in which case they are hooks attached to the tape by a snap. They can be found on both separable and non-separable zippers. As mentioned earlier, the zipper itself can be either separable, as shown here, or non-separable. Separable zippers are used on jackets or coats, for example, which need to open fully in order to be put on. Non-separable zippers, which can be used on dresses, flies, or bags, can be sold by the meter, so you'll have a greater or lesser length, with no finish on the ends, or with a precise length, which will often be between 8 and 60 centimeters. Let's take a look at the supplies we'll need in this video. First of all, of course, you'll need a zipper. But you'll also need measuring utensils, a pair of flat nose pliers and diagonal pliers, a textile pen or chalk, thread, a needle, and your sewing machine. Depending on the type of zipper and the method you choose, supplies will vary. But you may also need a lighter or matches, or even a gas lighter. Bias binding, individual zipper stops, and tweezers. This video will be divided into 3 parts. First, we'll look at how to shorten a nylon coil zipper, then a molded plastic one, and finally a metal zipper, separable or not. Let's start with coil zippers. Most of the time, these zippers will be non-separable. We'll use them for garments and accessories that don't need to open all the way. The spirals acting as teeth can be of different widths, but this will have no influence when the zipper is shortened. Coil zippers are the only ones that can be sewn on by machine, as they are very flexible and won't damage the needle or the machine. First and foremost, if you're making an unlined garment or accessory, you'll need to finish the ends of the zipper, as the edges of the tapes and teeth can be very uncomfortable and unaesthetic. To do this, start by cutting a 4 cm rectangle twice the width of the zipper. Here, my zipper is 3 cm wide, so my fabric rectangle is 4 cm by 6 cm. Align the selvages right sides together, fold over the protruding rectangle sides, and stitch 1 cm from the edge. Then turn the rectangle inside out and make 2 1 cm tucks to close the rectangle over the zipper. All that remains is to top stitch our tuck. I've already done it on the other side to show you what it looks like. Stitch on the wrong side of the zipper, as this is the part that will be visible when sewn. And voila, you've got a nice, quick and easy zipper finish. The easiest and most common way to shorten a coil zipper is simply to sew the ends together with the fabric pieces. Pin together the zipper and the fabric piece and stitch as usual. This seam and the fabric will prevent the slider from slipping out. You can see on this Ikatee banana fanny pack that the zipper is caught in the seams on both sides and the slider is enclosed. On some projects, such as a skirt, the zipper is not enclosed between 2 seams. To shorten it, we'll start by making a finishing off stitch by hand or with a sewing machine on the bottom of the zipper to block the slider on that side. It's easy to do by hand, stitching on one side of the teeth and then on the other side several times. Depending on the width of the teeth and slider, you make more or less 10 round trips. Then tie a knot to secure the thread at the end. You end up with a thread stop like this that prevents the slider from going through. On the sewing machine, we'll create a zigzag stitch over the teeth. Set the machine so that the needle stitches close to each side of the teeth, and reduce the stitch length to the maximum to stitch on the spot. Stitch a dozen times to ensure a solid seam. And this is how it looks in the end. For the top of the zipper, we'll fold the excess tape inwards at right angles so as to catch it in the zipper assembly seam. Sew the zipper and stitch over the teeth we've just folded to hold them in place. Here's how it looks when stitched. All that remains is to recut the piece of tape protruding from the seam. The slider is blocked at the bottom by the lock stitch and at the top by the folded tape. For molded, non-separable zippers, you won't be able to sew over them with a sewing machine, as their teeth are much stiffer than those of quill zippers. However, you can hand stitch around the teeth to lock the slider at the top and bottom of the zipper. This is done in the same way as for quill zippers. Stitch on one side of the teeth and then stitch on the other side several times. We make more or less 10 round trips depending on the width of the teeth and the slider. I'm doing it here on a separable zipper, as the principle is the same. In fact, this method can be used to transform a separable zipper into a non-separable one. For the top of the zipper, where the teeth are open, we can close the teeth by hand, matching the marks, to make our work easier. Once again, we make a dozen hand stitches, this time on the top of the zipper. And voila, the slider is now secured. If your zipper isn't closed on one side, or if it's separable, you'll need to finish each side of the tape separately to prevent the slider from coming off when you close the zipper. There are several ways of doing this. We can't use the same technique as for quill zippers, as the teeth of our zipper will block the machine and create excess thickness. For the first method, we'll use individual top stops. These can be found in some haberdashers or online. These stops are small metal US that you flatten onto the tape. We start by tracing the new measurement of our zipper on the tape, then remove the teeth above this mark, counting them using a pair of diagonal pliers. We first cut the part of the tooth that protrudes from the tape, then pull out the rest still attached to the zipper, again with the diagonal pliers. Continue removing the teeth until you reach your mark. Then remove the same number of teeth on the opposite tape. We can now position the new stops just above the last tooth of the zipper. We'll flatten them with a flat pair of pliers and press well to hold them in place. My tip for positioning them is to grab them with the pliers and slide the tape into the opening of the pliers, so that the stop is positioned very quickly and you can flatten it directly without it changing position. And here's how it looks. You can recut the protruding tape if necessary. This is the most aesthetically pleasing technique, but you'll need to find and buy extra stoppers or salvage them from an old metal zipper you no longer use. For the second method, we'll use a lighter to melt the teeth and fuse them together. We start by marking the new length of our zipper and cutting about 2 centimeters above it. Then we cut a tooth from the scrap zipper that we previously cut and insert it between the last 2 teeth before the mark. This step can be tedious to do with your fingers as the teeth are very small, so I'd advise you to use fine pliers or tweezers to help you. Don't make the same mistake I did. Lay your zipper on the work surface. I can tell you it makes the operation much easier. In the end, you cut off the piece of tape that's sticking out. Once the teeth have been positioned, we heat them with a lighter match or even better, a gas lighter, so that they melt slightly. And I insist on slightly, we just want the plastic to become malleable. Proceed gradually, taking care not to burn the tape. Then, using the tip of a pair of pliers, fuse them together. Be careful. Hot plastic can melt, fall, and burn you or your work surface. So be very careful with your fingers and work surface when performing this step. And there you have it. The fused teeth form a new stop that blocks the passage of the slider. We can now remove the teeth above our stops with a pair of diagonal pliers to obtain a small margin of tape. This method of shortening a zipper is a little technical, but you already have the necessary equipment at home, so you don't have to buy anything, and once melted, the plastic won't move. For the last method, as before, we'll mark the new zipper length on each tape. We'll use 2 pieces of bias binding with a length of more than twice the width of one side of the tape. If the bias binding isn't already folded, fold it in 2 like this to create a sort of loop. Then place it around the band and center it on the mark you made earlier. Put on a clip or pin and stitch as close as possible to the teeth on the height of the loop. Repeat on the other side with the second loop. Once sewn in, the loops will prevent the slider from slipping away. All that's left to do is cut off the protruding bias binding and the rest of the tape flush with the loop, and you're done. This method is very visible, but at least we can be sure that the slider won't go through with these thicknesses of fabric. We could also integrate this finish entirely into our project, making it a real aesthetic choice. Now to the metal zippers. Whether separable or not, we prefer to shorten them from the top. As with plastic, we start by marking the new zipper length we want to obtain. We measure from the bottom, since it's the top we'll be cutting. We'll now use our diagonal pliers to remove the top stops of our zipper by pulling them out of the tape. To do this, we place one side of the pliers at the opening of the stop and the other side on the fold of the metal. In general, the upper stops are U-shaped and closed on the tape. Take care when removing them, as you will be reusing them later. Now, using a pair of pliers, I remove the teeth by squeezing them tightly at the part protruding from the tape. You have to pinch and pull hard in one quick movement. Make sure you don't damage the zipper tape too much. Continue removing the teeth, one by one, until you reach the mark you've just made. I count the number of teeth I've removed on one side, and then I remove the same number of teeth on the opposite tape. Then I'm going to replace the upper stops, which we've just removed, on top of the last tooth by pressing them down with a flat pair of pliers. To do this, we grab them with the pliers and slide the tape into the opening of the pliers so that the stop is positioned very quickly and can be flattened directly without changing position. Finally, the top of the zipper tapes can be trimmed to leave around 2 centimeters of toothless tape at the top. The zipper has regained its original appearance, but is now shorter, and as always, the slider is securely blocked by our stoppers. And there you have it, all our tips on how to shorten a zipper. We hope this video has helped you and will be useful in your next projects. If you like this technical tutorial, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Happy sewing and see you soon at Ikatee.